So usually when you're presented in film photography, most of the time it will be 35mm film. Now, for 35mm film, you will have your rangefinders, you will have your SLRs, and you have your point and shoots, and maybe various different types of film cameras like the wacky Nimzo 3D. However, maybe you'll be tempted to dive a little deeper into film photography, and then you might be presented with medium format film cameras and 120 film. Welcome to Nostalgia, and in today's camera review, we're talking about the Fuji GA645i.
Got it bumping.
What it do, baby?
So initially, the Fuji GA645i, which is a mouthful to say, was introduced in 1997. It was a successor to the Fuji GA645 that was only capable of taking 15 shots per roll, while the I version takes 16 shots per roll. The difference between the GA645 and the I version is also that you would have a second shutter button. So if you're shooting in portrait mode, you could actually turn the camera to shoot in landscape, and you would have another shutter for ease of use. Now, this camera is basically a glorified point and shoot, but I really think if you're trying to start medium format film photography, it's the best one you can get. I've always advised that when you're starting film photography, you're better starting with a point and shoot because the camera pretty much does everything for you, which makes it a lot easier, and you can find that too in medium format cameras with the Fuji GA645i. However, you also have other options besides the Fuji GA645 or the I version. You also have the Fuji GA645W and the Fuji GA645ZI. The W is a wider lens and the Z version is a zoom lens. Now, the reason why I bought this camera was initially I was trying to get into medium format film photography, and I was seeing all of these great photographers like Petra Collins, Chris Nuver produce just insane pictures using medium format photography, which I didn't actually know at the time. I thought they were doing it with 35mm cameras, and I was hesitating between buying maybe a Mamiya 7, a Mamiya RZ, Hasselblad, just a variety of different medium format cameras. But like I said again, these are pretty legendary cameras and they're not cheap. So one day I was just scrolling Instagram, and as usual I saw Gunnar Style holding a camera in his hand, and I was like, what camera is that? I did some research and found out it was a Fuji GA645, and it was a medium format camera. Comparing to different cameras like the RZ or the Hasselblad or even a Mamiya 7, it was a lot cheaper. So I was like, you know what, just why not? So I actually bought one, and for me, my experience shooting it, I personally didn't have a great experience shooting it because the type of pictures I wanted to take were more suited for a 6x7 film camera to get that really true medium format look. And also, some type of pictures I was trying to take, you can only really do it with a Mamiya RZ67, and I was mistaken because I didn't really understand how, you know, there's importance to the lens you have, and it's not just only necessarily format of the film. So I unfortunately sold it to get a different film camera. However, recently I saw pictures that Gunnar Style took of Metro Boomin in Tokyo. You know, I could recognize that he was using the Fuji camera, and honestly I think that I just had the wrong approach to how to use that camera. I feel like there are certain situations where it's more proper to use that camera, and there are certain situations where it's better to use another one. And don't get me wrong, this is a great all-around camera for various things, but I had specific things I wanted to do and it wasn't really great at those things. However, as a camera that you bring for traveling, for vibing, for taking pictures of your friends, I think it's a phenomenal camera. Now, when I say for the 100th time Fuji GA645, what I mean by 645 is that the 645 represents the size of your negative. So typically people will be shooting 6x7, but you also have 6x6, and you also have 6x4.5, and that's what the Fuji shoots. And this might be the most portable medium format camera. Now, I might be wrong, but based on what I've seen, I think this is like the most portable one. And like, you could legit just use it as a point and shoot, which is crazy for that big of a negative. And for the lens, it sports a Fujinon lens. It's sharp, it's a good lens. A 60mm lens for this type of camera would be approximately a 37mm lens on a regular 35mm format film camera, and it's a f4 lens, which is not necessarily the fastest lens, but honestly, for what it is, which is a point and shoot on steroids, it's a pretty good lens. So some pros, well, first of all, this is a super great portable camera. It fits great in your hands. You can put it in your book bag. It's pretty small for, of course, a medium format camera. So I think that the fact that it's so portable makes it a great camera to have. Another great thing about the camera is the simplicity of use. I mean, it's a glorified point and shoot. What else do you want? Like, you just load the film in it and it pretty much does everything for you. And if you have Fuji film, it actually sets the ISO for you as well. Like I said, I think it's a great beginner's camera. If you want to get something where you have more control, I would not advise to buy this one. But for somebody starting and getting into film photography, medium format film photography, I think it's a great camera. And I mean, there's a little bit of hype, you know, with this camera. You know, you got people like Frank Ocean rocking it. You know, Gunner Style uses it. So, you know, I mean, the name's getting more and more out there, getting a little bit more expensive. So, you know, think about it before you buy it. And when I used it, I got very sharp images. It rendered beautiful images. The colors were beautiful. One thing I would say is that this camera, unlike, for example, the Mamiya RZ67 that can focus really, really close, this camera does not like you being too close to your subject. So you have to understand the minimal focusing distance with this camera, because you might actually miss a lot, and it's happened to me that I've missed a fairly amount of times with the camera. But it tells you the distance on the camera of what it's trying to focus on. So with that, you can kind of estimate that, okay, I'm probably in focus. However, if you get too close to your subject, you might miss. Another advantage is that compared to 6x7 medium format film cameras, where you only get 10 exposures, on this one you get 16, which is a good amount of exposures that you get with your film. So I think it's a little bit more wallet friendly having this camera compared to a 6x7. However, there are cons to this camera, because it's getting a little bit more popular, because Gunner Style has been seen using it, Frank Ocean has been using it. Prices are shooting up. So right now, it used to be a cheaper camera around like $400 to $600, but these days for the I version more specifically, they go over $1,000. So you have to just be mindful for it. Another thing I don't like about the camera is that there's a flash on it, and I like using flash in my film photography for my 35mm work. However, when it comes to medium format and this camera specifically, when I use the flash, I don't really like the pictures I get out of. I think that the picture are a little cold, a little lifeless, and it doesn't really have a nice look to it. So I personally would not really use this camera with flash. I've used this camera in a concert, shooting one of my good friends, Kevin, during his concert without using flash and just having a high ISO level film. I think I was using Portrait 800 at the time. It rendered some pretty great images, so I wouldn't necessarily use a flash with it. And I also said it was a fully automatic camera, but you also can use a manual mode, but I wouldn't do it because the buttons are not intuitive. It's kind of complicated and weird to use it as a manual camera. So I personally would just stick to automatic when you're using it. It's a pretty good camera, but it's no Mamiya RZ67 where you can focus super close. So it's important to keep that in mind. And also, it's a rangefinder. So what you see through the rangefinder is not necessarily what you see on your lens. So you might be a little bit off. It's a great camera. If I could, I would buy it again. Of course, you know, I wanted to change medium format camera, so I had to sell it to finance that one. And I wanted to get also a rangefinder 35mm camera. It didn't make sense keeping it, but if I could now, and if I had the money for it, I would definitely go and, you know, cop a Fuji GA645i, because when you bring it on trips, when you're traveling, or you're just bringing it as a point and shoot to just shoot stuff, it's a wonderful camera. So again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video, and, you know, comment if you have a Fuji GA645i. Tell me what you thought about the review. Tell me what you think about the camera, and, you know, tell me you have suggestions for a future video or a future camera review. And as always, check us out on Instagram, Newnostalgiafilm, and on Visco, Newnostalgiafilm. And, you know, as always, keep it nostalgic.